what was striking was, as I was standing there, I had a lady come up to me, point to one of the town signs full of bullet holes, and she's got tears going down her face, and she says, "That's my hometown."
Wow. Yeah, I guess the one final comment I would make on that, and it probably bridges over into the next topic. This idea that we've seen and heard people talk about of transgress in order to transcend. And like when Dr. Robert Grant gave his lecture on how all the world is one and God is one and you are one and I am one and there is no sin. And everyone, when he said there is no sin, everyone, the whole pavilion erupted in thunderous applause, because they are constantly telling themselves sin is just a social construct. It's a social construct in order to keep you in bondage. And just as the serpent said to Eve, in the day you eat of it, you will become like God. So the idea, you transgress, sin is just a social construct. And so if you transgress sin, you'll transcend the limits of humanity and become like God. And that's part of the spiritual hunger. And of course, a lot of the people that do end up doing that, they find out the hard way on the other side that it didn't bring the great spiritual enlightenment that they were hoping for. And but that really kind of brings up the next point: technology, transhumanism, and the desire to become God. The idea, Burning Man often brings together technological imagination and spiritual ambition. So we have AI, cryptocurrency, transhumanism, biohacking, consciousness studies, and Silicon Valley utopianism, all raising one central question: what is man from the perspective of the Burning Man ecosystem? So here we got discussion points to: are we made in the image of God, or are we just raw material to be upgraded? Is the body a gift from God, or is it a platform to be transcended? Is death an enemy conquered by Christ, or is death a technical problem to be solved by human ingenuity? Is technology a tool under God, or is technology becoming a priesthood of the future? The earthly city seeks power, mastery, control, and glory. Transhumanism can become one of the clearest modern forms of the ancient temptation: you shall be as God. So, your thoughts. And Audrey, perhaps, the key question being, when does human creativity become the attempt to seize divinity? Did you have answers in your search?
Yeah.
The internet says.
I have a few here. It's actually quite interesting. To keep it simple, Burning Man is a visible display of mankind seeking the unseen and unknowable through self-created rituals. This search for the divine frequently intersects with modern technology, leading to a new techno-humanism. The body is treated as raw material to be upgraded or a platform to be transcended. Its intent is to master death instead of believing in a resurrection. So then it brings up three questions. Is the human body a prison to be escaped or a gift to be cherished? Is man a creature made in the image of God or a biological problem to be solved? And three, is death an enemy already conquered or a technical glitch to be fixed? So mankind's desire for mastery through technology is an attempt to seize the redemption we were meant to receive as a gift. And then to Carl's point, the Vitruvian man is seen as a mathematical exploration of the body and as a pillar between heaven and earth.
The Vitruvian man. Could you define what does that mean? The Vitruvian man?
Vitruvian Man goes back to Michelangelo, and the piece that he rendered showing man within the circle inside the square, and the man outstretched, man becomes the point, the
Oh,
axis point of
is that
yes.
Leonardo? Leonardo da
Oh,
Vinci?
pardon me. Yes. I
Okay,
said
okay,
Michelangelo. Sorry about that. You're right.
okay.
Leonardo. Yes. Man becomes the point, the point of the universe.
Man is the
Everything.
axis mundi.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
I'd have to go back and do some more homework on it. At one point, when I was writing my book, I talk about Vintruvia Man and go into it a bit, but it's been a while since I dived into what Leonardo was trying to convey with it. But it is that concept of the universe within the man, and the man is within the universe,
Interesting.
and they are essentially of the same substance or the same essence.
You know, in the art, because this is like, what part of the art do we see at Burning Man where that creativity element of the art is really attempting to bring out the divinity of man, or to create divinity, to make man divine, or to acknowledge that man is divine, if if that's the underlying belief behind the art, which isn't what we believe. But what do y'all think? What are some examples of some of that art?
I'll tell you right now, the man in 2017 being placed in his own temple.
Now, in that case, there was just one temple. There was the man and the temple as one, or
No. So in 2017, they did have the temple, the one that we're all associated with,
right.
in its rightful place on the very edge of Deep Playa. But then the man itself was completely ensconced within a pagoda temple of its own.
Okay.
And it was highly controversial that year because people were like, "You're hiding the man. You're enshrining the man at the same time. He's not out in the open the way he has been for all the other years that we've attended, but rather he has been placed inside of his own shelter, inside of his own temple structure." And it was a temple. Bob and I, because that was the year that Bob and I went together, we arrived just on the tail end on Sunday night. We arrived just on the tail end of the opening ceremony at the man, and it was a highly symbolic, spiritually symbolic ritual that had taken place, and we caught just glimpses of it because it was hard to get in to see it because it was all contained inside of the temple space that the man was standing in. But I saw enough of it to be able to kind of get a glimpse of what the opening ritual looked like. So, I mean, and then there's the other aspect to this, and I have not, of all the years I've gone, and this is, I kicked myself, I have not been to the ritual where they light the fire. Because there's a fire ritual that begins everything, and it's the fire that burns all week long, and then that's the fire that's taken to the man.
Burn the man.
To burn the man. There's a whole ritual associated with that, and even bringing the fire to the man.
Where... that's interesting. When did they do that?
I'd have to look it up and see what the schedule is, but I believe it's in the very initial phases of the week.
Would it be probably Sunday night or earlier than that?
I think Sunday night, but I have to take a look. I'll have to go back and see what I can find on that. Yeah, I've never been to it. I kicked myself, but that's one I have not gone to.
I hope that we could go to that. That would be very interesting. Wow.
So those are just a couple of examples. I think the one, Audrey, that we went to, the Chapel of Babel, also kind of exemplifies it to some extent, because you couldn't really tell, is this a mockery or is this a declaration? You know?
Yeah. That was really interesting.
When I was...
never get past the irony of that whole thing. And it actually was one of the most talked about art pieces out there that year. And even like years later, like we're still talking about it, right? It was spectacular. It was beautiful in a gothic, dark way. Like it was so weird. But that's a good example, other than the obvious temple, the man, even Central Canada, as being, that expression through art. But I'd also posit that, while we're out on the deep play and we see an art piece and we go, oh, that's cool, that's fun, and we go play on it or whatever, sometimes we actually get to talk to the artist and it becomes deeply personal, right? There's a reason for
Yeah.
why they built that structure, and that then becomes, that expression through art, right? And then when you understand the story, you look at it in a completely different way and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Or wow, I see your sorrow.
Right.
Or, and that brings up that Ukraine art structure. What was We Are Fine? Is that what it was?
I am.
Oh,
I am.
I am
I am.
fine.
I am fine.
I am
I'm
fine,
fine.
yeah. Like, well, there's an example right there. I am fine is what
Yeah.
was being
Yeah.
texted
Yeah.
around Ukraine. Every time a bomb hit, they would text, I'm fine, and so what they did was they actually brought old street signs and town signs and stuff like that that had bullet holes, and they created this great big monument that said, I'm fine. And so that right there becomes an expression.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a really important piece because it ventures into the political side of Burning Man, how it becomes a platform for geopolitical tensions. And I think with that one, what for me, what was striking was as I was standing there, I had a lady come up to me, point to one of the town signs full of bullet holes, and she's got tears going down her face, and she says, "That's my hometown."
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was a gut wrenching piece of art because of what it was. I mean, you're seeing the actual signs, street signs with bullet holes, and anybody that does any amount of shooting can actually see some of the signs. You can see the bullets entry one way and bullets exiting the other way, and you're going, oh, there's an exchange. There's an exchange of gunfire happening here. Very, very raw, very emotional piece. Another aspect of the art at Burning Man that I think it bears a little bit of attention is that sometimes the art causes even the non-Christians to kind of suck in their breath and go, I don't feel comfortable with this. I think it was 2019. Yes, it was 2019. And there was a golden calf. A golden calf with a saddle on it. Audrey was there. I somewhere in my mess of stuff, I think I've even got a picture of Audrey, you standing beside it. Jen, one of the other people of our camp, Jen and I ended up having a long conversation with a disciple, very well-known disciple of Ram Dass. And it was like a 2-hour conversation. And this disciple of Ram Dass was...
Wait, who's Ram Dass?
Ram Dass he's a very important figure within the early counterculture movement, worked lots with Timothy Leary, helped write the psychedelic manual, and then he was a professor who became enlightened by going to the East and came back as Ram Dass, one of the most important figures within kind of the consciousness New Age movement, blending psychedelics, Eastern spirituality, and Western thinking. Here, I think one of his books is Here Now. I think I have to go back, look at my library, because I have a couple of his books. Anyways, here we have this disciple of Ram Dass, like really was like Ram Dass's close confidant, and he's going to Jen and I. Did you guys see the golden calf? I don't even want to come near the golden calf. I know what that means. I know what that represents. And it was bizarre because I'm like, oh, dude, you are a disciple of Ram Dass. You're a oneist, 100% oneist. You believe in the oneness of all things God, man, nature. And this gives you the heebie-jeebies because in your heart, you know the difference.
It brings up an interesting question And I think we've seen this at Burning Man over and over again. There's a large contingent of Jewish people at Burning Man.
Yes,
and
there are.
most of them are very secular Jews. I've talked to, last year I talked to at least one member of the Israeli Defense Force who was on leave. He was actually, I think he was a reservist. In that, where the divided Jewish community is going among the secular Jews versus the very religious Jews, and how the nation of Israel is deeply divided over these two things, although at the moment they're united under this common cause of the need to survive. I wonder if, I'd be interested to know if we pose that question to Christians, to certainly born-again Christians, we wouldn't go up and give any kind of honor to a golden calf, because we know the story in the book of Exodus. I wonder if it just it makes me think, I wonder if the guy was a secular Jew, that he is it's his Jewish background and understanding the history of that's coming out and saying, no, I can't go there. That I know that's wrong. And
Yeah, I know who the individual is. I'll maybe do a little bit of homework on that, but yeah, it's a good question, George. I don't know if he would be a secular Jew that way or not. His worldview, however, is the oneism, 100% within the onist camp of Ram Dass.
And if you're onist, why would you object?
Exactly.
To
go embrace the golden calf. Right. Yeah. Go and embrace it. Yep.
Wow.
Interesting juxtaposition, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where, anyway, okay. Very interesting. Okay, so let's just move on. We still got quite a bit to cover here. The next point is on the idea of radical freedom, which, of course, from a Christian perspective, we know that their idea of radical freedom is actually just another form of bondage. But from the Burning Man perspective, radical freedom, sexuality, and the meaning of the body. The main idea is that Burning Man publicly displays one of the central doctrines of the earthly city, that the self owns itself and may define itself. So, out there at Burning Man, radical sexual freedom and radical self-expression are treated by many as pathways to liberation. Identity becomes this kind of fluid type thing, experimental, self-created. You can create your own identity, and the body is a canvas for self-expression. Relationships may be detached from covenant, permanence, or fertility, or moral order, and especially in the idea of moral order, where they continuously teach each other that those are just social constructs. And for many people, this feels like freedom from shame or repression. As Christians, we should recognize that emotional reality, that's what they feel, but we don't accept the underlying belief system that they're holding, the underlying, really, anthropology, what they see about man. From an Augustinian perspective, the earthly city confuses freedom with autonomy. Biblical freedom does not mean that we don't have limits. It means that our life is rightly ordered toward God. Key question: what vision of the human person is being enacted through radical self-expression at Burning Man? Through either the concept of radical self-expression or examples of people that are radically expressing themselves.
Number one, it is a focus on the self. It is a focus on the self and its pursuit of the higher self, the capital S self. That's what the pursuit is. And that sense of radical self-expression that goes with it is something that you can't contest it. or you cannot challenge it. At least that is the framework. You're not supposed to challenge, because that brings in the concept of judgment. I remember in 2017 when Brian, Audrey, and I went to a regional burn, I foolishly, and I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, I foolishly challenged the assumption of some person, one lady's radical self-expression, and she just chewed me right out. Yeah, absolutely just chewed me up and spit me out, because I was dumb enough to question what in the world she was trying to achieve with her radical self-expression.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
so I couldn't express myself with a question.
The thing that comes to mind for me in this concept is that the radical self-expression that is most prevalent out there is expressions of nudity, I think. Now it's not that everybody's nude. It's not, you don't walk around and just, because it's actually a very small number of people percentage wise, but that would be the thing that I think is, and they used to do a thing, I've heard about it, the people that I knew that went to Burning Man a decade ago, they found out I was going to Burning Man. They said, well, don't forget to bring your tutu. Because, what is it, Tuesday, Tutu Day or something like that?
Tuesday.
Yeah. And I was like, I feel very free not wearing a tutu. And I have no intention of wearing a tutu. And I feel very free wearing clothes. I have no intention of nudity, So, but because they're in that idea, they have this idea that somehow that's freedom, or that's an expression of liberty. So, yeah.
So, okay, Tutu Tuesday. I have BRC Weekly, the 2022 edition, which is, of course, was the newspaper for Burning Man. I had just pulled out of my files here this morning earlier. On the inside,
time to terminate Tired Tutu Tuesday.
They even mock themselves. That's self-expression right there. But to the point of the nudity, and this is just observation, and I can't claim any scientific way of demonstrating this. But why is it that it appears to be mainly old men who are nude in the beginning of the week? I don't get that idea of self-expression, but it's almost always the case, to the point where in 2024, when my daughter came in and we talked about the nudity that she would be seeing, and I said, the first people that you're going to see nude are senior citizens, men, old men. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
And I think we also noticed that the women didn't start going topless until somewhere post midweek, which is interesting.
Right. Yep.
And still in significantly fewer numbers.
Right.
I think Audrey wanted to say something. You raised your hand, Audrey.
So what vision of the human person is being enacted through radical self-expression? One thing out there that's hard for me is seeing kids out there, because they're being forced into a radical self-expression.
And I would say, like, that, going back to what something we talked about at the beginning, that the evangelist who was talking about how Burning Man is a very, very dark place, darker than the Satanic Temple. Part of the reason why he was saying that is because he apparently, from what he said, had been exposed to a lot of that. And so he must have had a very limited range of where he was going, because that's not everywhere in the city. It's only in certain camps. But there is darkness. And in fact, it's almost like, not even sure, I want to even ride by it, because, like, what if at some point law enforcement decided to do a raid on one of those areas? Right. And there's a bit of a dilemma too, because we understand, as a number of people have said in the past, that one of the reasons why they want to bring out this, or it's not a reason, but one of the kind of side benefits from their perspective of bringing out the free sexuality ideas is they know that it keeps Christians away from going to Burning Man at all. And we're meant to, like, we can't participate in the sin, and we really don't even want to see the sin. We don't want to be next to it. But at Burning Man and the city as a whole, it's not everywhere. So I think we can still go.
Yeah. And sexuality is mocked as well. Last year, Gary and I were riding our bicycles down one of the side streets, and we encountered a camp, something to the effect of vegetables shaped after sexual body parts, and just how it was laid out, the whole thing. Gary looked at me and he goes, this isn't even sensual anymore. They are literally mocking their own sexual, what's the right way of saying this? Their own consistent focus, because there's a constant focus on sensuality and sexuality.
Yeah.
That this particular camp was actually seemingly mocking the whole thing already, because it's so in your face. And so, Gary was like,
yeah,
they've actually taken something that we would consider to be sinfully grotesque because of how it's being personified and portrayed, and they've decided now to mock it. It was just a bizarre little encounter.
Yeah. So that's it. It's interesting that when we get into this whole idea of self-expression, and especially in the area of radical self-expression, and when it gets into the areas of sexuality, that is the area where I think you do really encounter the darkness. Some of the other areas are, maybe either neutral or benign at some level, but this area, and it's one of those things, and you know why? I think the real reason, when we think about it, is because we are made in God's image. We are meant to reflect His image, and His image is holy, it's righteous. We're meant to reflect that. Human beings are meant to reflect that. And when we try to create some form of self-expression that is separated from His image, there is only one direction it can go, and that's darkness. So we pray that we'll be able to have a voice to help rescue some people out of that darkness, because we go as bringers of light.
Yep. And actually, with that in mind, we did have a situation in 2019 where one of our teammates engaged in, I'm trying to think of how to best possibly say this, where she basically recognized a potential abduction situation. And she could see what was happening, and she intervened. That's the word I'm looking for. She was able to intervene in an abduction situation that was unfolding right before her eyes, and others then could see what was happening and kind of help this girl get out of a really bad situation.
Very good. All right, so our next point, global unity of the nations and playa geopolitics. Yeah. So on this one, the main idea is Burning Man imagines a global humanity beyond national division, but the conflicts of the nations still appear there. People from more than 100 different nationalities gather together in this one symbolic city, and the playa can feel like a vision of global unity. But the real geopolitical tensions do not disappear, as we've seen. We've seen Israeli-Palestinian tensions, Ukrainian-Russian conflict, Western anxieties, climate politics, techno-globalism, and ideological activism, all there at Burning Man. So we've already talked a little bit about the Ukrainian war-related art. We could review that. I think we could also talk about the 2024 Israeli-Palestinian tensions. Before we go into more discussion, just in the Augustinian framework, the earthly city longs for peace, but it cannot produce true peace because its loves are disordered. Augustine understood that earthly societies can have order, beauty, law, and civic goods, but they cannot create the true peace of the city of God, apart from God. Only in our connection to Him can we actually do that. Burning Man gathers nations around a temporary symbolic center, and in the biblical conception, Pentecost is what gathered the nations around the risen Christ. And in the book of Revelation, we show the nations healed and gathered before the Lamb. An amazing, amazing picture of something that is in our future. Can mankind achieve true global unity without reconciliation to God? That's the key question. Let's begin discussion.
We can't achieve global unity without God.
That's right. No, we
In
cannot.
fact, he's the only one that does bring about unity. Our attempts are always a failure. My goodness. And this, of course, is Audrey's wheelhouse, my wheelhouse, George, your wheelhouse, understanding how the globe tries to unite itself and how catastrophically it fails. In terms of the geopolitics of Burning Man, I remember 2023, Audrey, when the Ukrainian minister for digital defense, instead of being back home on the battlefield, was at Burning Man, setting up a Ukrainian war art piece. So Burning Man then becomes a global propaganda platform, and it does, for both sides. Every side ends up playing that propaganda game. We've seen it with both the Russian and the Ukraine side. We've seen it and more we've heard it from the Russian side, but also seen it big time with the Ukrainian side. Seen it both with the Palestinian side versus the Israeli side. We've watched it all play out, that tension play out.
The Israeli-Palestinian tension in particular really stood out in my mind. That's the first year I went to Burning Man. And having the... I remember with Caden riding along, he was talking to an Israeli lady, and one of the maintenance trucks came by that were full of Palestinians, and she had an Israeli flag on the back of her bicycle, and they started yelling racial slurs at her and telling how much they hate Jews and F you Jews and all kinds of stuff right there, and on the playa. So there is no peace, love, and unity. That was very, outwardly expressed. Now, I don't think you would hear things like that in the seminars, but again, so much of Burning Man is not, the seminars are really important. That's where they promulgate the doctrine, but the culture, underlying culture is really how the event is manifested. And then, so what other thoughts do you all have on this one? What other areas are they trying to achieve global unity without reconciliation to God?
Just the messaging,
I want to say a few things
messaging of Burning Man every
there we
year.
Go, Audrey. Thank you.
What I already touched on earlier was that, we have to remember cultures, or I don't know, those that don't go to Burning Man think Burning Man is just a hippie desert or hippie party in the desert. And it's so not that. Yes, normal people attend, but it's also full of politicians, Silicon Valley, globalists, celebrities, all the influencers, the global influencers literally are there. Elon Musk goes, Paris Hilton goes, like they're all there, right? And so what we have to remember is that it's also a petri dish of values, global values that, as I said before, we are expected then to bring back to our spheres of influence and treat as this is literally the norm. And we're supposed to now play it out and action it out in our everyday lives, in the default world, as they call it. It's the political messaging, but the politics is combined with the spirituality. And that's why at Burning Man, it's very much accepted because of the spiritual aspect of it. We can't say today that governments and global politics is just all governance. It's a spirituality. It's a religion. It's a movement. It's a consensus, collective. It's no longer policies and stuff. It's what's good for the global community, not what's good for my area. So, and that all plays out at Burning Man.
Right.
Stay tuned for our final episode. While we wrap up this series on multiple aspects of the event, probably the topic of greatest importance will be the contrast of Burning Man's global utopian ideal, the earthly city, with the city of God. Burning Man's utopia says that if we change the environment, the structures, the technology, and the rules, mankind will be free, while sin is just a social construct to keep people in bondage. Christianity, on the other hand, as the city of God, says that mankind must be redeemed, because sin is real, and it is the deeper problem. In fact, it is the source of all problems. So we'll see you at the end. Thank you.